having vision and being able to explain that vision to people. And one of the ways you learn that first and foremost is being able to discuss a film that you love or hate and why, and articulate that and communicate those ideas of what resonated with you to somebody else. And that's exactly what Peliplat's all about.
This episode is sponsored by Peliplat and Craftsman Films.
We talked a little bit about the community aspect of being involved, and especially in the Vancouver area. Obviously, like, this is the one thing with film school versus no film school that I think Vancouver really has a unique place in this, because of the areas like Run and Gun and Crazy Eights and the film schools that exist in the city and other programs that are going on. There's no excuse if you're in Vancouver to not getting into some kind of community of people involved in the film industry. The purpose of these communities and something like a Peliplat as a community platform, which obviously, this is your thing now. And something just before we get into that is this idea that I think film school offers, that I think we should all encourage, no matter who you are, is you need to also learn what good filmmaking is. And I think that's part of filmmaking in film school. I found always was this idea of discussing movies as well, and discussing what made good characters, what made good movies, what were good stories, and why did they work, and then using the talent, the skills, and the tools of filmmaking to kind of reverse engineer how to make how to re-engineer those kinds of moments on a film set. Because obviously a movie is not just a collection of scenes and shots and everything like that with no barrier to it. There is the creative vision behind it is what makes it special, what makes it art. And I think with Peliplat, what you've done is created a community approach to that can be very helpful for filmmakers, but also for film fans. So let's talk a little bit about Peliplat.
Peliplat has come along, at a very interesting time. Getting to be the head of department at VFS was fantastic. One of the ways I got there is that I knew the job inside and out and the school inside and out, having been there for so long. And so this leap to a new company in a new field has been really fantastic, and an opportunity that I relish, to be able to challenge myself anew. And you're absolutely right. We talked a lot about having vision and being able to explain that vision to people. And one of the ways you learn that first and foremost is being able to discuss a film that you love or hate and why, and articulate that and communicate those ideas of what resonated with you to somebody else. And that's exactly what Peliplat's all about. So it's kind of an interesting company. So it started in Latin America, probably like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, as purely as a database, to service a couple of other companies that were doing some streaming. And so they were very specific streaming service platforms. And so people uploaded their own content, and then they needed this database to kind of organize it. And that's how Peliplat began. And then this lady, Ariel Wang, who's the CEO of Peliplat, came in, and she had this really interesting vision to kind of grow out a community surrounding this database, because everybody loves film and TV. That's one of those things where, apart from the weather, that's probably the next most popular topic is, have you seen this show? Or, are you watching this thing? Or, all of that kind of stuff. It's really smart of her to kind of think about how can we get all of these people into a place and facilitate this conversation in a way that is a little bit more personal than what's out there right now. So like if you go to like Letterboxd, people are leaving these like 2-line reviews. It's kind of jokey. It's very social media. It's just kind of like, what are my friends watching? If you go to IMDb or like Rotten Tomatoes, there's a little bit of a problem with, some toxic culture and people review bombing things. But it's very much this critic, looking towards this old guard critic idea of like, if the critics like it, then it's a good piece of art. What we're trying to do at Peliplat is kind of forge ahead with a new way of doing it. And so we really love for our folks to put themselves into their reviews. And we try to call them articles more than reviews because of that. And so we want to know where the movie meets you, because your lived experience, your experience, maybe even at the theater watching the movie, all of these different elements, they inform your enjoyment or non-enjoyment of it. I mean, there's a friend of mine that absolutely loved Starsky and Hutch, the Ben Stiller version of Starsky and Hutch. It was her favorite film of all time, not because she thought the filmmaking was superior, but her brother had passed away and somebody brought over Starsky and Hutch. And it was like that movie made her laugh for the first time since her brother died. And so it reminds us, I think, of the power of these stories and the fact that not everything has to be as brilliant as these things are. And as much as I love them, it doesn't, not everything has to be a Kubrick film or, Citizen Kane or anything like that. We need entertainment and we need to tell stories and we need to connect over that. That's really what binds the human race together. It's what allows us to, run this crazy planet, sometimes, most times not necessarily in the best way, but it works somehow. And it's all comes down to storytelling. So Peliplat had this community kind of spring out of that. And we've been fostering the community in Latin America now for a couple of years. We just surpassed 4 million registered users on the site, most of which are in Latin America. But last year, I got word that these folks were looking to set up a headquarters in Vancouver and take on the English market. So I sent them a cold email and just said, hey, I heard you're building this thing. It sounds really interesting. It's completely different from anything I've done, but I'd love to be part of it. To my surprise, they welcomed me in. Initially, I was doing more PR stuff and kind of helping reach out to different educational institutions because that was their main strategy to our main strategy to get going here. And then at Christmas time, I got to take over the content team as well. So we've got a group of in-house writers that write articles and kind of work as example users as we try to get this to be, more user-generated content purely. But yeah, that's the idea. It's a place to go discuss films, do all these things. And then the next phase of the website that we have rolling out probably later this year and into next year is this IP incubator that you were talking about. And so all of this stuff is very much in development right now. We've just hired a couple of very senior writers to come in and advise on the sort of writer angle of it. We've got really talented product developers and folks on the technical side of things putting together these tools. But the idea is to create essentially like a marketplace of ideas where writers can come in through, Web3 technology and a lot of this stuff that I'm still learning about. They can control their IP and really empower the writers to create this sort of decentralized, as I say, marketplace of ideas where you would be able to not only have very clear ownership over your IP, but then you could even barter that with other folks and hopefully have the cream of the crop rise up and develop new and exciting IPs in a much more sort of grassroots writer first kind of way. So that was the part of the pitch that really made my ears perk up, is when they started talking about empowering writers and creating super transparent IP guarantees and making sure that it's very much a writer focused place, because that's my background. That's what I love. I think writers are the best people. I always have the most fun hanging out with writers, and now I get to do it at work on a daily basis. So it's really super fun, and getting to be involved with Run and Gun. We sponsored Run and Gun and sponsored their Best Writing Award. We've gotten to work with a bunch of other folks in town. We're talking to a couple of the big festivals in town right now. Yeah, kind of being able to be really deeply engaged in the community in Vancouver while trying to build an online community has been really cool, because I've been part of this community for a long time, but always kind of from my own little corners, whether it was the film school corner or the indie filmmaking corner. And now to really be able to dive in and be part of some of what I see as the cornerstone elements of the Vancouver film community has been really, really cool. That's kind of the 2 cents of Peliplat.
I love it, because I think you raise a very good point about the idea of like developing IP in a transparent and sort of open, a little bit of an open environment too, where you're doing it with other people, but in a way that protects your ownership of that particular of that property. And especially because, again, in this we're in this age right now where AI is generating so much creative content, what we call creative content, or at least replacing this creative content. This feels like a way where you can almost like, okay, we now know human beings are part of this. Like, this is a human being, because this is generated where there's almost like a chain of IP title tracking of like how ideas are being developed. So we can say, no, this really was developed with people and with a human being in mind, and the human and with human storytelling in mind, as opposed to just something where it's like we spit an idea into chat and got a script out of it, or something, sold that and got it made. That feels like a really interesting and I guess validating approach, because we will all get tired of the AI generated stuff. And I think you're already seeing that. I know YouTube is already like made a statement to say that they're going to penalize AI content and anything that doesn't have unique voices in it, or they're going to put them less on the algorithm. So they've already started doing that, and it feels like that's something that is necessary, and something where platforms like this are an extra layer of, look, we can't stop AI from doing what AI is going to do, but what we can do is create environments where AI is irrelevant as a force, because the creativity is still coming from us as a community building it together. What I have really loved about exploring Peliplat and then writing an article myself was kind of getting back to that film school thing in a weird way, is just this idea of like I learn a lot about how other people see films that I've watched before, and different perspectives on, unique perspectives on why on certain aspects of those films that I hadn't even thought about, especially from cultural and unique voice standpoints of like, really, I never saw the racial implications of that movie, for example, or I never saw the cultural and societal things in there. And some of that is my own, sometimes I watch some movies I just watch as a fan, but it's nice to get that deeper understanding, and in some cases disagree with it too. Like look at it and go like, no, that's not how I see this movie at all, or that's not how I view this at all. But knowing that you're in an area where people who are presenting this are presenting their perspectives and their life experiences in the films, and that's ultimately what we're doing when we watch films anyway, right? Where there's no movies are a very accessible form of art and entertainment. You don't need to understand anything about how a movie is made, or even what goes into storytelling, to know whether you liked it or not, or whether you thought it was a good story or not, or you cried for a movie or laughed or something. It's like you either did or you didn't. So your reaction is your own reaction, whether you know anything about it or not.
100%. And I think that's one of the things too that we're trying to bring in is, if you have an understanding of film and you're able to bring that kind of analysis to it, if you understand filmmaking, that's great, do that. But we're also empowering people to write about films who might not know how the sausage gets made, but they can still talk about the fact that I had this reaction and this is why I think I had that reaction to the story. Because that's what it all comes down to is, did the film communicate the story properly? All of these things we just talked about with film school, at the end of the day, you're all trying to just achieve this one idea, which is, can we tell this story in the way that we want to? And anybody is able to chat about story. Story is innate. Story is a part of the human experience. And that, again, that's kind of what we're trying to do is kind of welcome in folks who might not think of themselves as writers because, maybe they don't write on a very regular basis, or maybe they are in a field that's actually not writing at all. But when something affects you. And I think if you interrogate that feeling, you can figure out why. And those are the interesting stories behind the stories, where you start to realize, like you're saying, I didn't realize that element to a film. There's a really cool article the other day, and I wish I had it on hand to actually credit the person who wrote it. But it was about Conclave, and it was a female writer, and they were talking about how Conclave, it was like almost a celebration of gossip, and how these men in these very powerful positions, their main tool to figure out what was going on and to get to the next level was gossip. And it was a really convincing argument. And I thought to myself, that is so interesting, and puts it into a context I never would have come to on my own, and yet celebrates all of the way the movie works really well in the same way that I think it works really well. So there's stuff like that. There's a young writer on the site, Shirin, who's written a couple of very interesting articles. She wrote one about the Minecraft movie, which I didn't see. She loved the movie. It was very entertaining for her. But then she had a very interesting perspective on the female characters in the movie and their roles and what they got to do. And so, all of these different perspectives, and I think it kind of goes part and parcel to the fragmenting of the film audience, right? Back in the day, you had to go to the theater to watch a movie, and the only people that got to write about it were these people employed by newspapers that could, write the review of it. And it was very monolithic. And now, in the age of streaming, the audience is so fragmented. There's shows like an actor that I feel like kind of went away and didn't work has actually been working on a show that's been going for 7 seasons that has a big following. And the thing is like with that fragmenting of the audience, I think also comes this idea that not everything has to be for everyone. I mean, Hollywood obviously kind of has to make, if they're making these $300 million movies, they got to try and make them for everyone. But the amount of TV out there and storytelling that's really interesting and layered and telling these underrepresented stories is really cool. And on Peliplat, you get to see these folks react and write about it in a way that gives everybody just as much, because even our in-house writers, we give them really no special treatment, right? Like, we don't tell them what to write. We've got a bit of a tone guide that we sort of say, hey, this is kind of what we're going for, what we want the users to go for. But we let them write about the opinions that matter to them, and we want them to have their own voice on the site. And we do the same with the people that we try to bring in and welcome to the site, is like, hey, bring you. Like I was talking about earlier about the filmmaking, that's the only thing you have that nobody else has that really makes you unique, is your perspective on life. And if you can explain a little bit about where that comes from and how it informs the way that you experience art, I think that that's always something interesting that I'm going to want to read. So yeah, it's been super fun getting to read all of these takes.
Yeah, and I think that that comes down to, like, every director I ever work with on a film always comes in with their list of favorite films or the list of influential films and so on. But what I gravitate towards is when they have a deep understanding, or at least they're figuring out what they like about certain moments and aspects and what they want to bring to the table. And I almost feel like that you don't have to necessarily be an expert on theory and all these other things in order to be a good filmmaker. But I think you have to love films, and you have to love film and TV. You have to love the medium as a way of expressing, as a way of storytelling, because there's lots of different ways to storytell, and you have to get in there and go, like, why are film and television so unique to me, or what makes those things so important to me? And also, what differentiates a 1 hour a television series, as sort of we'll call this maybe like a legacy television series, like the ones that we tend to watch, like the Games of Thrones, and then the newer ones, the Successions and the things like that. What makes them different than spending an hour watching YouTube videos? The content is still content. The time spent is still the time spent. But why would you choose these stories versus just watching cat videos for 2 hours?
100%. And so much of it, I mean, I'm of the belief that character is king, right? And that we're constantly interrogating the human experience through these stories to try to connect, to try to understand, to try to escape. We're one of the few species that needs this amount of entertainment to be able to function and get through life. And so, yeah, I think so much of it is about the character part of it. And that's the other cool thing, is seeing these writers writing on the site and getting to learn even their kind of character and their perspective as they talk about these other shows or these other things. And, the fact that some people have such fierce ownership that they feel over some of these things because they've affected their lives so much is super interesting. We're trying to really keep that conversation healthy and have it not veer into like the toxic kind of fan bro cliche culture. And that's one of the things that I want to put out there, is to anybody that maybe feels like their opinion hasn't been represented, or maybe feels like the things that they feel about a film or they want to know about film and TV aren't out there. Come to Peliplat. We want you on our site. We want you to share your version of how things made you feel. When it comes down to your opinion, or like you're saying, if you cried, if you laughed, there's really no right or wrong. We just ask you try to explain it as best you can. That's it.
So brass tacks, how does what's the process? So if I'm like, okay, cool, Bob, I just listened to your podcast here. I'm going to check it out. And what am I doing when I go to the site? What's the experience going to be like?
Totally. Well, we just updated the look and feel of the site, so it's a little bit prettier, which is really cool. And so if you come to the site, you're going to see at very first, you're going to see the bar on top with all the different things you can do. So you're going to see your articles, different kinds of articles you can click on. We really love our articles. We feel like they're kind of, the crown jewel of the site. And so, they're anywhere from 500 to, 1,200 words long. We try to kind of dig into what the thought process behind something is and why somebody feels that way. So those are the articles, which we've talked about. But there's discussion posts, which is kind of a little bit more of a short form way to discuss things. If you want to just ask a simple question, or if you have an opinion that you haven't really fully formed yet, but you just kind of want to throw out there and bounce it off the wall, a little bit more like a blue sky kind of situation, or Twitter, we've got those. So discussion posts is a really fun thing to do. Our database is linked to everything. So one of the best parts about when you write an article or you do a discussion post, you can tag whatever film you're talking about to our database. And you can go into our database, you can star different titles, you can create watch lists, you can keep track of all of the films that you've watched. You can write little short reviews just in the database itself. So you can play around with that and explore that all day. On top of all of that, we run monthly these writing challenges. So obviously, to sit down and write an article about a movie, and this is kind of the most intimidating thing about all writing, is that blank page. And so we run these challenges where we give folks topics that they can write to every month. So if you go to the site right now, the challenge topics for July, which you can write right up until the end of the month. The movie that feels like summer, the movie that reminds me of summer, we've got a bit of a summer theme. So, Wet Hot American Summer, maybe something that's a little bit more obliquely related. I think of like that movie Chef really reminds me of summer, all the barbecue in that movie. So you can kind of get that prompt to make you think about something and then bring your angle to it. We've got a bit of a creative writing one. We always try to do a story-based challenge topic. So it's called I Ship It, matchmaking, because Materialists came out this month. You can kind of take two characters from any IP and put them together and write a little story about what maybe a date with them would look like and have a little bit of fun with that. There's lots of different topics that we do to try to just get people thinking a little bit differently, rather than this review-based kind of separating yourself from the art. What's objectively the all-time best movie? We don't want to, those conversations are fine, but that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on more about, being a little bit creative, being entertaining, thinking outside the box, and really putting, like I say, putting your heart into the article and sharing a little bit about who you are as a person. So yeah, the challenges are a really great way to do it. So when you come to the site, you'll see all that stuff. You'll see some stuff on the side about different writers you can follow. One of the things that really kind of makes me sad, one of the only things that makes me sad about my job, is that we've got so much great content, and people, a lot of it will come and go because we just don't have enough people on the site looking at it yet. So there's so much great content to dig into. And that's one of the things, if you're not a writer, if you don't want to take part in discussions, but you just want to come and read great content, come and follow different writers. There we'll have suggestions for you on the page. You can poke around. You'll find the writers that really resonate with you. And yeah, that's kind of Peliplat in a nutshell. It's a really great rabbit hole to fall down. There's tons of stuff to read, tons of stuff to do. It's all by film fans for film fans. Even though we're an internet company, we've got this creative element, but we're also a website. There's a lot of tech people that work at the company. The first thing they always ask in the interview process is, do you love movies? What did you watch last? You might be interviewing to be like a web developer, and that's going to be the first question: is what movie did you just watch? And if you don't see that spark in somebody's eye when they start talking about movies or TV, we'll find somebody that does have that spark. And that's one of the really cool things about Peliplat, is that passion for storytelling permeates through the entire company.
Yeah, what I've started doing actually is now, I try to watch at least like 2 movies a week, one new and one sort of like old one, whether I've watched it before or somebody suggested one that was like from the 40s or the 50s or the 60s or something. And what I have started to do is I'll watch those films, and then if I'm like really, feeling it, I go to a Peliplat and I'll look up to see if anybody else has written stuff about it. And it's sort of like getting a bit of a deeper dive into the movie, not even necessarily to write anything about it or to say anything socially or anything like that about it. It's just more like, because I enjoyed the film, I want to see what other people had to say about it, and what other people had to say about certain perspectives on it. And then I feel as though the next time I have a conversation with someone, I actually feel a little more informed and part of a community that I have explored just with a film or just with a person. And that has been really enjoyable. And it's fun to dig into Peliplat and and some of the articles online as well. And I'm excited to see what it grows into. It feels like it's got a real opportunity for a community to be built, and for you to kind of get away from the other social media side of things and just focus on just, hey, we're all part of this club that love films, and it's fun to read about them and talk about them and then watch them together.
Yeah, and we've got some big plans as well to launch things like a decentralized movie club where we can put a movie out early in the month, and then, once everybody's had a chance to watch it, doing maybe a live stream and discussing it and doing some other elements like that, getting more ways to connect with our audience. So the other cool thing about it, it's new. And so coming to the site now, the community is growing. And if you get in early, I think it's one of those things where you can really be part of the growth of something. Like the amount of changes that have come to the site through the product and through, refining things, even just in the year that I've worked at the company, has been so exciting. Yeah, that's what we see from the folks that have been using the site for months, is that they get really excited and they end up giving us feedback about the product. And we're even implementing some stuff that just regular users are sending us. So it's that thing right now where the community it's growing really fast, and it's going to be really awesome in terms of this big thriving community. But right now it's at a nice size where everybody it's a small town right now, essentially, where everybody can kind of know each other. And, you have that real kind of folksy feeling going on. And that's something we really want to retain as we grow bigger. But it's an exciting time to get onto the site as well.
It's the video store of the new age.
Yeah, it kind of is. That's actually a great way to put it, Anthony. I'm going to steal that.
Oh, good. There you go. Use that. Yeah, I was thinking about it because I remember like old school video stores where like the owner and some of the people who work there always were like these just, film geeks, like they just knew everything, and they'd recommend films, but then they'd also tell you why, you should, if you watch this film, you should try this film, and things like that. And then even before Blockbuster, but like those old school family video stores. So
totally. Well, that's where Tarantino started. And to bring it back to our earlier conversation, the first thing you've got to be able to do to be a filmmaker is to, coherently talk about films. So it's a great place to start that skill.
That's fantastic. Well, we have gone quite a bit over what I had promised you. So
that's okay. I think there's lots of editing that could happen on some of my rambling. So it's good.
Thank you so much, Bob, for all your time today. And, as we always say, like there's enough content for 2 episodes, and we might have to bring you back for another one.
I love it. Anytime. I love you guys. I love what you're doing. I love the podcast. So yeah, you know how to get a hold of me.
Thank you so much. And we will put all the links in the show notes so everybody has opportunities to check out Peliplat, and let us know if you have any questions about film school. Maybe that'll be a follow-up episode we can try sometime too.
Yeah, totally. Reach out to me on social media. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm on Instagram at Bob_Peliplat, Bob at Peliplat. And yeah, if anybody has any follow-up questions, I'm always happy to talk.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Bob.
Cheers.